All right, what we're going to be doing today is creating yogurt. So we're going to design it. This is one of the engineering projects that we have put together in the Biology Patterns curriculum. First of all, I kind of want to talk about yogurt in general. Yogurt is one of the oldest foods on Earth. It was probably discovered somewhere about 5000 BC in the Middle East or possibly in Central Asia. The name itself comes from a Turkish word for thickening or coagulating. And the basics of this is to design a yogurt that is going to be both healthier and cheaper than a yogurt that is already existing at a high school. The other thing that we need to take into consideration is the taste, because obviously it could be as cheap as you want it to be or as healthy as you want it to be, but if nobody buys it because it tastes garbagey, we want to make sure that we avoid that as well. What we are going to be using is different types of milk. So you get to choose between 2, 1, and 3%, which is known as whole milk. You also are going to be adding for protein some whole milk powder or powdered milk. And then some condensed milk, which is sweetened condensed milk, is going to be used for the sweetness. And so you're going to be putting in 1, 2, or 3 tablespoons depending on what you would like to add. Again, looking for those 3 pieces, right? Trying to lower the cost. Everything has a cost. You want to be sure that you are lowering the calories and maybe increasing the protein. And then also you want to make sure that it tastes good. And I always talk about how it has to be yogurt. Yogurt to have the consistency of yogurt. You don't want it to be too runny or too thick. And the way it's going to get there, so I'm going to kind of show you this image here, the sciencey bit. Inside of milk, we have lactose. Maybe you've heard of an individual that's lactose intolerant. So what happens is something called lactase that is found within the bacteria consumes the lactose, because it's an enzyme, and turns it into lactic acid. If you know anything about acids, acids are very sour. So think of like lemon juice. It's going to be a very sour taste. And so what happens is over time, the milk is going to have all of its lactose consumed. And it's going to turn into lactic acid, giving it a more sour taste, which is also going to lower the pH. The other thing I think that's really interesting about yogurt is if you are lactose intolerant, you can consume yogurt because all of the lactose has already been consumed. The 2 bacteria that we're going to be looking at are Lactobacillus bulgarius, obviously discovered in Bulgaria, and Streptococcus thermophilus. They're going to take turns, sort of in a tag team way, of breaking down that lactose together. One does it at higher temperatures, one does it at lower pH. So what I'd like you to do now is look at a food label like this. So when you create whatever your teacher tells you to do in the classroom, you're going to be creating some sort of recipe. This is what each thing has. Every single person is going to be using 150 milliliters of milk, regardless of if it's 1, 2, or 3%. They are all going to use the yogurt starter culture, which is where we're going to get those 2 bacteria that I introduced to you a second ago. And then you get to decide how much sweetened condensed milk would you like to use. If you use 1, obviously it's going to be 0.5 grams and it's going to be a certain amount of carbohydrate. So 3 grams of carbohydrate. If you double that or triple that, that's going to change your numbers. So if you look at the recipe that I'm going to be building, you're going to see that I have chosen to use, obviously the starter culture and the milk are the same. I'm going to use 2%, which is going to be sort of in the higher end of the milk fat. I'm going to be using 2 tablespoons of sweetened condensed milk and 2 tablespoons of powdered milk. And so I went through the process of showing you here exactly how we're calculating the fat, the carbohydrates, and the protein. So all 3 of those things you can do on your own. And so I suggest at this point, you design your own yogurt, whether or not you're going to make it or not. In the next video, we will perform the making or the engineering of the yogurt.